Yeah, you can't use Vaseline for everything.
And with that, folks, we are back to another UnDisrupted Live here at ISTE Live. And we have a very special guest with us today. Before we bring her up onto the mic, we have our opening debate, and it's actually this one, again, coordinated by our special guest. So we've done the hamburger sandwich thing, or no, it was a hot dog, a sandwich. Today's debate is cereal a soup? What do you think, Adam?
Wow. Depends. You know what? I would say yes, because now you can have cold soup.
Right.
And my kids, I think they put their cereal in the milk so long it gets all soggy, so it's not hard anymore. So it looks soupy in nature. So when I look at them eating their cereal, it looks like soup. So I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
Cereal is soup.
Could you have hot cereal?
Yeah. Oatmeal.
Is oatmeal a soup?
Ah.
That just took it to a whole other.
All right, let's bring
Like
Martha.
porridge.
Martha Bongiorno. She is the creative learning strategist at Adobe. What's your take on this, Martha? I mean, you brought this topic to us. Now I'm like in my head. I have all these different angles, but where do you land?
I mean, I feel like we're upping a level because this was a question brought to you by a 14-year-old in my household. So she likes Hot Topic.
Very astute 14-year-old.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, is cereal a soup? I've always believed in soup as being hot. I'm from the South. We have a lot of like jambalaya, jumbo, that kind of stuff. Crab soup. I've never had cold soup before.
Gazpacho. Yes.
Wait, that's
You've never heard of it?
soup.
It is, but I mean, I know.
Yeah, gazpacho is not a thing in the South. If you ask for gazpacho in the South, you may be assaulted.
What
I
about
need some hot crawfish in my soup.
maybe it's savory versus sweet though, because cereal is usually always sweet. Although I guess you could say like Mueskalix or one of those other
Yeah.
that aren't super sweet. Because every soup I have is usually hearty, or it's got like vegetables in it or something. Or you're just talking about crawfish. I mean, things in there.
Could you sustain yourself on soup? Could you sustain yourself on cereal? Do you get all the nutrients you need from a cereal?
According to the commercials, it's part of a balanced breakfast. So I mean,
There we go.
1,000% of your sugar for the day. That's for sure. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's the difference of nutrition. I'm not gonna. The debate rages on, folks.
Yes.
I mean, these are the hard hitting topics that we're always liking to
I'm
bring.
gonna go, no, it's not a soup.
Oh wow, you're doing a hardline
I'm
stance.
doing a hardline stance.
Oh, you 14-year-olds out there that are
Come
listening.
at me, bro.
Yeah, let's go. Oh, so you speak the lingo. You're not faking. You're not Sigma.
No.
You're not capping.
Working on my Riz, folks.
Whoa, she's got a
Oh,
Riz
there we
game
go,
up.
there we
Riz
go.
game's up.
I
It's all.
got the red going. Pop a little
That's
red.
right. Pop a little red there. There we go. Yeah, it's a whole nother world. Those of you that are out there listening, like, I don't know what they're talking about.
Welcome to Gen Alpha is what we're saying.
Yeah,
Wow, yeah.
Go borrow a 14 or 15-year-old, and then you'll figure out what we're talking about, because we're still trying to figure it out ourselves. Tell me a little bit about, now you worked in, of course, Atlanta for a long time as a librarian. You and I met years ago doing webinars and things together. And then, of course, for our listeners out there that don't know, Martha was also a Poetry Slam contestant at the 2023 Philadelphia Poetry Slam, which we just finished last night here in Denver. So tell us a little bit about your journey that got you to where you are now.
Oh gosh, actually, I want to say I think I've known Adam longer than you, Carl.
That's
Adam's a local too.
That's right.
From the Atlanta area.
And everybody knows everybody in Georgia, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that may not be a lie. So I started education down in Savannah, Georgia, and I've been in education for 15 years. I was a humanities teacher at the first rural STEM school in the state of Georgia, and it was super fun. And I had the most epic principal who was way beyond his time and saw the direction of future ready librarians. This was like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
That was not really
the
a thing
beginning,
at that
yeah.
point. And so he saw what I was doing in the ELA classroom, trying to do all this PBL work with Chromebooks, one-to-one Chromebooks in rural Georgia. He's like, you should do that for the library. So he placed me there, and I've been there ever since and have loved every second of it.
It's always cool when you have an administrator that sees something and pours into you.
Yes.
And that's what I think good leaders do when they see people and they pour into those individuals and they allow them to grow and prosper in those positions and don't hold them back. Because sometimes you get an administrator that may want to hold somebody back, or they may think the person is doing too much.
Mhm.
So it's really great that you had an administrator that saw that in you.
That saw me as a human being.
Yes.
And saw my skill set for sure. That was a really for me, a modeling moment, because we do that with students all the time. I'd never been around a leadership that also did that, and it helped me grow as an educator. And so I've tried to take that with me. And so that's kind of where I'm at now, is trying to empower other educators in their spaces and what that can look like for them.
Yeah, and I think one of the under threads of this conference that I've heard a lot is kind of teacher burnout and mental health and all of that. I mean, how do you stay on track with? I know our ending question is how do you keep yourself undisrupted? But again, advice out there. What are you hearing? I know you're very connected as well, especially in the library space. And that position in particular is just like seems like it's constantly under attack every year. Like, how do you sustain with all that kind of pressure?
Yeah, that is probably longer conversation than we have for our podcast for
Yeah.
sure. So there's a couple questions that I heard. There's what am I hearing, and then how am I coping with my own
Right.
balance, right? And so a lot of what I'm hearing, especially in the South, and I don't want to get too political on things, but there is a lot of burnout, and it's from administrators who
Yeah.
may not necessarily see the scope of the work of the individual teachers. I think a lot of times in times of stress and post-pandemic, we're getting a lot of stress on teachers. We're asked to do more with less. Our budgets are being cut. The COVID money is going away. There's so much going on. And we go back to how we were raised, how we were schooled. And instead of relying on best practice and what we know we should be doing, we go into fight or flight mode. So that's what I'm seeing with administrators. It trickles down to teachers. And so the way that I cope is try to stay optimistic. I try to go in and find the joy in the moment. I try to make sure that we're being vulnerable with students and our teachers, that it's okay to be in this space and feel like how we're feeling in that moment, but how do we cope through that? And so that's why I've always been drawn to that creative expression and creative literacy element in the library and in everything else that I do. But for me, it's been a lifeline, not necessarily like a skill that I'm developing, but a way to really cope and express myself in ways that I didn't know I could. So.
Yeah, and I think that creativity is an outlet for a lot of this too. And I think, thinking back to, I'm thinking about my own kids who sometimes will have struggles with mental health or things that they're just sad about or depression and kind of moments. And like the thing that always kind of brings them back, I've found recently, especially now with teenagers, and you already talked about this, especially girls is always fun. All of us now have teenage girls, right? Yes, that's right.
Yes.
Is having an outlet, some sort of creative, like one of mine just loves to draw. And like, how do we, that's great. And I started thinking, man, as adults, we don't do that. I mean, we really don't. We don't have maybe because we don't have the time or too much responsibility. It's like, how do you make the time for yourself to do that stuff, right? And then of course, show that creativity and model that creativity to your students too.
Intentionality, right? Like we budget our times for so many things and we're going from one thing to the next. And we're always like, oh, we can go do this soccer practice or this ballet recital or this band rehearsal and all these things. If we can schedule time for that, we should schedule downtime. And so I have to tell you, one of the things that we do in our household, and it is not popular with our children,
This is good. I'm taking notes.
electronics are turned off at 7:30 in our house.
Wow.
Unless there is homework going on that is needed electronic, like a computer or something or whatever. Electronics, my husband and I, our kids, electronics go off at 7:30 every
Yeah, leading by example and doing it too. Because sometimes, I mean, it's easier to be do as I say and not as I do as a parent.
Oh, for
But when
sure.
you get teenagers, they're smart enough to look at you like, "Come on, mom. Come on, dad. Like you're doing something that you're asking us to do. Come on, come on, come on."
Yep. Yeah, we have to walk the walk.
Yes.
Just talk the talk for sure. And that's hard too, in our line of work where social media is a thing. And
Constant.
my daughter, this is a whole other topic, but my daughter just got Instagram because her entire marching band is on Instagram. So we're monitoring that. But we also have a very open line of communication on
That's
like
important.
setting those boundaries, setting how much time we are online, how much time we are on electronics in general, because I feel like we connect online too. You don't want to disrupt that.
Hey.
But we also have to make sure that we're setting time for that creative piece, whether it's a board game. Have y'all played Munchkin before?
Yeah.
I have friends who do board games every Wednesday, and I think that was one. I didn't get to go, but it was a couple weeks ago. They did a game called Munchkin. I
I
didn't,
love it.
but it's a game. Tell me.
It's like a little card game. So it's like an intro to D&D if y'all
Yeah,
like
Yeah.
are in
my
that.
middle
Okay.
child's into D&D.
Okay, so we are avid D&D players in our house, but we have a 9-year-old, so we had to kind of ease him into
Yeah, you
it.
can't get into all the weird stuff that you have to do,
Yeah,
story
no,
planning, and yeah.
I think we got our kids into gambling doing that game left, right, center.
yeah.
You got to play that one.
No,
I'm gonna add that to my
Yeah,
list.
left, right, center. It's
intro to
yeah,
gambling.
it's got gambling for beginners. My 7-year-old's like, Daddy, can we play that game again with the money?
Oh my gosh. Well, we gamble already. Like I'll do the chores if you do this, but
Yeah, just a different commodity. Yeah, yeah.
One thing I did like here at ISTE, one of the organizations did have the board game.
Board game night.
Yeah.
Yeah. Eric
So
Kurtz and Dan Ryder. Yeah, good group.
yeah, so it was something different than some of the other after hours. You got a different venue. People got a chance to sit down, talk, play games, do something different than hang out at a bar. So, I mean, I really like that as an activity, and hopefully we see that again at ISTE next year in San Antonio.
well, they took a key from the school libraries that I've been in recently. Have y'all seen the huge chess
Yes.
pieces up there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the little logs, they have the little campfire areas and stuff too. But yeah, but the big chess pieces are awesome.
And that's something school libraries are doing all over now is having board games that are large and open like that, that are inviting to bring kids in. Something as simple as that can really help with mental health. It connects you with other human beings on something that we can all agree to play at the same time, whether it's Legos or a huge chess set or something as simple as tic-tac-toe. But I mean, we do that in our house, but we also do that in our classroom spaces too.
Yeah.
So
I mean, sometimes you have to get, like I said, get off technology and get that connection again, playing games. Learning how to play it with another person, a real person, is a skill. Especially in elementary, having that learning by playing, that's something that I hopefully we don't lose as we start bringing more technology in these spaces and one-to-one. And I know there's some pushback to technology in the classrooms and in spaces, but if as long as we keep that learning by playing, I think we'll continue to foster creativity.
yes. Okay. So you just touched on something really important, right? Like, how do we scaffold those creative literacy skills? And to me, that starts by being offline in a space that we can all agree on and we all feel comfortable with, either uncomfortable together or comfortable with a game that we already know,
Yeah.
right? And so if we can learn problem solving and human connection through that, then when we get into an online space, we can scaffold those conversations even more.
I just think about all you learn from that. I mean, I wrote a book on failure, and the problem I really struggle with is that only a small percentage of kids are involved in any type of collaborative sport, like a team sport. And so if you're not in athletics, then you're really kind of, you're a high school kid. I have 3,500 kids at my daughter's high school, and I'd probably say 500 of them are in athletics. But the rest of the kids are just kind of walking around. They never have an opportunity to learn how to fail together, how to play a game together, how to overcome competition or someone being rude. I mean, there's some trash talk, right? I mean, even at the family board games can have the
I'm
trash
really
talk.
intense, I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, my kids, but I'll tell you what, and I've always been a believer of this. Like, I never let your kids just win. I mean, let them struggle against you. When they finally beat you, when my daughter beat me at poker one time, she's always going to remember this. She talks about it forever. She's like, Dad, that time I beat you at poker. And she tells it to all her friends, like, but if I'd given it to her, like, yeah, I let you win, then it's a totally different experience. Like, they need the struggle. And some people, I know that's a parenting discussion, but
I don't know. Sometimes playing Uno, especially if you're playing doubles, that can almost like make kids cry because I did that to my son. He's 7.
You cry at Uno.
Yeah, they'll draw fours. It's like boom, boom, boom. It's like draw 16, son.
Yes. Actually,
that's the title of the podcast, by the way. I cry at Uno. That's totally it. We just found it.
oh
That's
my
it.
God.
Write it in the book.
But it's so true. I had I know it's not a parenting thing, but so much of this relates back to the classroom. Like,
Absolutely.
I had 2 very different children. My 9-year-old is not athletic in the least. He is very D&D and loves like that thought process. He's going to be an RGP,
Yeah,
RPG player.
yeah.
I can see him playing Mass Effect and Assassin's Creed and like all that kind of stuff,
Esports
right?
probably and do all that stuff. Yeah.
1000. My daughter, on the other hand, close your ears, folks. If you're not from the South, you may not know this, but like pageant South, she was like pro cheerleader, like competitive cheerleading. So for her, she went in the opposite direction, like too competitive. And so she learned how to lose. But as a team, there was a lot of like mean girl mentality going on. And I know that's not how it is everywhere, and there's a lot of team camaraderie that comes with that, but she did not have that experience.
Yeah.
So anytime that we could have an outlet for her to like kind of de-stress and think through how to navigate social situations. So gaming came in that piece too, like, how do I navigate, you just betrayed me in Risk or something, you know what I mean? So I think there's so many different skills and there's so much value to board games and being able to navigate that, whether you're sports or not.
Right. How do you fold it? I mean, really all this falls under the umbrella of SEL in a lot of ways, right? And I think, the creative aspect of it, I mean, talking about losing, failure, all of those things
Yeah.
are skill sets, right? Although it's weird that there's certain states that you can't say those three letters in that order. Apparently, you can say ESL, but not SEL. How do you balance all that? And now you work for a global company, and so again, you're gonna be working with all these different communities.
Yeah.
How do you balance all that too, and be like, all right, or maybe get it in without saying the phrase, I guess.
I'm in the business of helping students.
Yeah.
End of story.
Period.
Yeah.
Dot.
The-
Yeah.
I think we can use the word SEL in the South. It definitely tends to be more that way, where we have to be very cognizant of the words we're using. But at the end of the day, I did not become an educator to pick one child over another. Like, they are all under the umbrella of wanting to be loved on and foster these skills. They're going to be the next global citizens, so they need to be treated as such.
Yes. Absolutely.
So I don't shy away from that conversation at all. I believe in creativity for all, and hard stop.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So what role do you see as the library, learning commons,
Media
in that
specialist. Yeah.
in that role? Because I heard one person say the library learning commons is almost like the land of misfit toys. Everybody kind of just goes in there and they're happy. So what do you see that role as?
Oh my gosh, I kind of see it as the heart of the school. You pump all this joy and excitement and love out into the entire school. All of these little, maybe even an octopus where you got your little, tentacles going out in all these different pieces. And if you're at a school without a school librarian, you may not see this, but if you walk into a school and they have a well-run school library with a certified school librarian, chances are you see that impact in every classroom, in every program, because we touch every single student and every single teacher. So for us, we are that first kind of line of defense to remind everybody to remember as students first, and then content. So how can we kind of fuse those things together? I could talk about the role all day because we do curriculum, we do programming, we do community outreach. There's just a lot of things. One specific thing that we've done in the South is start doing Maker Mondays, and we've started doing Mindful Maker Mondays.
I like that.
So adapting this mentality of just Legos out, which is always fun and good and exciting. But then how can we align that to like the SDGs or, another program if that's off the table for you folks? And even skill building, like today we're focusing on collaboration, or today we're focusing on critical thinking, or this particular project that we're doing. For example, you may have heard this, but my daughter, she sews these little huggers for women's shelters in Atlanta. And so they're just little stuffies.
Oh yeah.
And it's simple
Yeah,
that
yeah.
you can do, but you put out felt and you hot glue some eyes to it. And we align that to no poverty and mental health and women's rights and like all these different components. So it's little things like that that we can do in our spaces to empower the students to make a difference in their community, which then helps foster those creative skills and then see themselves as part of the global
I love that intention
Yeah.
too.
thing.
Yeah, having a purpose as to like there's something that happens and it's triggered in the brain when you're helping others, when you're giving back, when you're helping a community that you
Yes.
can't really teach, you have to do. And that's what you're talking about there. And we don't do that a lot in school, unfortunately. It's a lot of irrelevant information. It's fake situations, whereas you're talking about actual real world application.
Well, thank you for that. Part of the joy of being a school librarian is I don't have content standards in the way that a normal teacher does,
That's why I
right?
like it so much. Yeah.
I don't have to go home and grade.
Yeah.
Not usually. I do sometimes to take it off of a teacher.
Standardized testing. That's what it is.
That's
We all pitch in. We all pitch in.
But yeah, it's like, how can I help students during lunch or their homeroom, or even like a Friday brain break for a teacher and say, hey, can I come in? And here's an activity we've got going on.
Love it.
Yeah, I've seen like, library media specialists turn their space into like a poetry corner during lunchtime where the kids can come in there and have like open mic and do things. Those are those really awesome things that those spaces provide for those students of all backgrounds to be able to express themselves.
Yes, we do open mic mornings every Friday and they sign up, and we have students doing poetry. We have students who are just playing their instrument. We had some really amazing dances. We have comedy. We have, anything and everything. We had a mime once that was really funny.
No ventriloquist doll.
I'm waiting for it.
No.
Carl won't be there for that.
No.
Oh, I'll invite you next time.
Don't send me pictures. Don't FaceTime.
But you know what that touches on is that creativity takes on so many different forms, and it's not that traditional artistic creativity that we think about so much. We talked about drawing when we first started, and that's such I love it, and it's a great way to de-stress, but it's a traditional view of creativity. Whereas like leadership, the ability to be a human connector, like I can see you like this and you like this, so let's hang out together. That is a form of creative
Gift
expression.
of talent. Yes.
Because I think that's where the magic really happens when you start talking about with technology. Because we're contractually obligated to talk about AI. I'm going to go ahead and mention it now.
Yes.
But as you start
We
talking
made it
about,
almost to the end of the podcast before we said it, though. We're getting better.
but as you start talking about like generative AI,
Talk about
that creativity
Yeah.
with generative AI is how we're going to really take it to that next level. Whether you're talking about things with Adobe and being able to be creative within that platform, how can you build creativity prior to getting into the technology? And I think that's where a lot of us are trying to figure out where the rubber meets the road.
Well, I think we touched on, we could talk about AI and creativity too, and like where are these images coming from that we create,
Yep.
and like ethically, if that's ours to take or not. So I believe the more that we can prepare our students with the things that we've talked about today, when we introduce AI, they'll be better prepared for those conversations for sure.
Where can people find more about you and the work you're doing?
Oh, thanks for asking. You can find me at Mrs. Bongiorno EDU on all of the socials, minus the talk. I'm not really a TikToker. I'm a millennial in that.
Yet.
Yet.
Yeah.
The power of yet.
Oh,
Yeah, the power of yet.
The 14-year-old will get you on. That's what my 15-year-old did. She
So-
got me on TikTok.
So you kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, but if you can kind of tell our audience, what is something that Martha does to keep herself undisrupted?
I hang out with you fine folks. That's what I
That's
do.
it.
There you go.
Best answer ever given on the
There you
podcast.
go.
Yeah.
No,
Crack
it's
it.
so
Hot take.
I have an amazing group of librarian friends, PLN, if you want to call that. They're more than that to me. And we call each other and we hang out, and have coffee online or, whatever. But you got to find time for you and for your people. And that keeps me grounded. And we're taking a national park trip right after ISTE.
Oh, cool.
So I hike a lot. We've done the 52 hike challenge. I like being out in nature. So that's my other.
The kids are going to be really excited about that after I talk to your husband.
Y'all don't even know. Like, it's going to be great.
That's going to be awesome. I love the PLF, I guess, for professional learning family. And so turned it into that in a lot of ways. Well,
Yeah. You got to watch those acronyms because that could be like some organization.
I know.
The PLO, the PL.
If that's you, we apologize.
It was a bad one. I just said right off the top of my head. That usually happens that way. But
We got to Google it first to make sure it's
yes,
okay.
we might have to cut that later. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us on the podcast. Of course, everybody out there listening, be sure to subscribe and give us a review. We appreciate it. We might even give you a shout out on a future show. This has been the UnDisrupted Podcast, brought to you by Alfred. He's Adam, and you can follow him at AskAdam3.
And he's Carl, and you can follow him at Mr. Hooker. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, we are better together,
And we are better
undisrupted.